There we go.
Okay, welcome back to another candid conversation with Chaos to Come, Candace and Siobhan. I, of course, am Siobhan. You have the lovely Candace beside me here. And today
Hello.
we are so fortunate to be joined by Marsha Van Weinsberg. That is a mouthful. I've practiced saying that a few times and I still didn't crush it. But Marsha joins us today. She's a life adversity coach. She's a speaker and a best-selling author. And we are so happy to have you with us today. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
We are so happy. So, Marsha, you have a pretty incredible story. We didn't have a lot of time to talk beforehand, but besides being a best-selling author, two books down, you have this journey. And so, I'd love to just sort of dive into. Let's start with one of your books. Let's start with this book, and one of the books you have right now is When She Stopped Asking Why. And
Hmm,
this is part of your own personal journey. So maybe if we want to start there, and you can talk a little
perfect.
bit about that.
Absolutely. I always felt that I was going to write a book. I just didn't know it was going to come from my most difficult life experience. That's what I didn't know.
Mhm.
And when I was, normal, I would say everything was like normal, whatever we call normal. And raising two kids, I was working in the healthcare field as a kinesiologist. So I literally have spent most of my life coaching people and coaching people with how to create change physically in their life. And when we started to experience drugs in our home when our kids were younger, it literally came out of left field. I was like, what is this? What is happening? And the only way I can describe it is that for us, it was a monster that came and it just grew. It never went. It was not a phase. It didn't come and go. We made it very clear that it was not okay. And it just took over all aspects of their lives and ours.
Mhm.
It 100% did. It opened up multiple wounds of like shame or shame stories. I was receiving criticism from many people for not handling what was going on in our home. And that has just understanding that my world got super small. I was afraid to do anything, but I was asking actively for help outside, but I couldn't find the answers. And when we went through this for a number of years, and it was really ugly at times, almost losing them both, going through some pretty dark times for us. I remember taking a sheet of paper to the counselor and saying, okay, I did all the things you told me to do, like a little student literally going, I've checked the boxes, but I still have the problem and I don't understand what to do. And their answer saying, because it's not yours to solve anymore. And it was like, but how can that be as a parent? I don't understand.
Yeah.
And it just is not an answer. And it really took to the point of almost losing them both, that I remember having the most of my clients, you have that moment on the floor where you're like, I cannot do this anymore.
Mhm.
And hearing the voice saying, like, just stop. And I hit a point of separating myself and realizing that I can't own someone else's choices. I literally have to own my own, because everything I was trying to do to fix, manage, control, change everyone
Mhm.
wasn't working, like not even close to working. And I was losing myself in the process. So I had to start to choose myself first, which I know as a parent, if you're hearing this, you're like, but how? It's practice, it's work, it's understanding that at the end of the day, even if we had never had any issues with our kids, that it is their life to live. Like, it is their life to go and live it however they want. It's not mine to control. And that is just was that message was forced upon us at a young age. And I started to really journal, do a ton of inner work, like in so much inner work, so much counseling support, investing in coaches, trying to figure out how to just move myself, not trying to build a business. And a friend said to me at one point, do you feel like you have made it through the worst of your story? And I said, yes, yes, I do. Actually, I do feel like I do. I have. And she looked at me and said, then you have an obligation to share with how you did that. And I'm like, oh, crap. Like, she just knew exactly what words to say to me. And that's not pressure. She just knew me enough to
Yeah.
know. And she said, you have an obligation to share that. And I started to share. I started to speak in really small groups. I was working with the schools. Like I wasn't hiding in that sense. We had very open communication with the school of what was going on. And literally everyone was helpless at that time. And so we were coming in speaking to other parents. We were running little workshops. We were doing things to give back in ways that we would realize that like this was healing for us and we could do something with it. And then follow time over that, somebody said, I think you have a book in your journals. I'm like, it's not a book. There's no way. And I started to really think, what if it is a book? What if it is something that, and I started to connect, reach out with publishers, try and figure out what to do with it. And lo and behold, a book came out of it. The reason the title is so important is when she stopped asking why, because that is literally when my life pivoted, is when I stopped asking why. I mean, for years, it was why us, why them, like why, what did I do wrong? And people would say to me all the time, what is one thing that you did wrong? And I'm like there's no one answer that I can say, because that means I'm owning choices that weren't mine. So my entire platform and everything that I do is about owning your choices, taking responsibility, radical responsibility, like owning your story, sharing your story, because it doesn't matter what happens to us. It matters what we choose to do with it. So ownership is everything. So that is really when a lot of it changed. When I stopped asking why and started to focus on what can I do next? What is my next action? Taking responsibility for myself, stop blaming everyone else for where my life was at. I don't know how to say it except that my life changed because the way I approached my life, and then all of my life changed. It all changed. My relationship with my kids changed, everything changed. And we started to empower them to make different choices, but at the end of the day, like they're still their own people. So they will do whatever they are going to do with their life. It's not mine to control. So it really all started with just a book and deciding to really vulnerably share my story of when she stopped asking why.
As somebody who also nearly lost my dad to addiction and knows all too well exactly the feelings that you're talking about, was there ever a moment you said your friend had mentioned, do you think you're over the worst of it? Were there moments then for you being like, please say that that was the worst of it? Like, were you ever just living that fear of like, what if it's not the worst of it? Like what if the other shoe drops?
So I love that you said that, and that's a great question. And thank you for sharing. This is really my whole point of my platform is I don't have to go far to find someone else who's been affected, but it's not, we're not alone. We think we're alone because we don't talk about it. Like we think
Right.
we're alone because we don't talk about shame stories. And so the more you don't talk about a shame story, the more power you give it. When you start talking, give the power back to you. That's the difference. So thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. And was there a point? Yes. I can't even tell you how many times I'm like, what's going to happen next? Like how can it get worse than this? At this point, I mean, our kids were missing for days. They were gone. And I'm talking they're like 13, 14, 15, like gone for days, couldn't find them, didn't know where they were, weren't going to school. You name it. It was like infiltrated every single aspect of our life. And the times when, I just want to give you a snapshot, the times when people, you work and then you go home and relax. There was nowhere for me to go. I had nowhere to go because at work I had to fake that life was okay, and at home I'm like, I don't want to go home. I don't want to go home because I never knew what I was going to find, or I didn't know when the bomb was going to drop. And it was always in the middle of the night. It was always like there was police. It was all of these things. So I lived on eggshells forever. I waited for the next shoe to drop. Like always waiting for the next shoe to drop. And I had to get to a space of realizing that, well, a lot of really bad things have happened and you have figured out what to do next, so that when the shoe drops, you're going to pick it up. Like the next shoe's going to drop. Something's going to happen and you're going to figure it out. I had to create mantras for myself that were, Marsha, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And I say this with my clients all the time. It drives them bonkers. But you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You know what to do. You might not like the answers, but you know what to do. You're here because you know what to do. You're here because you know what to do. And I would say those things to continually affirm that I could make the right decisions. And then the next thing I also had to do is that when you deal with addictions, and I don't wish this on anybody. I don't. It's a horrific experience to go through. When you go through addictions, you get to a space where when you're looking at your loved ones, they're not there anymore. So
Mhm.
I had people say to me, well, at least you didn't lose them. Like at least they didn't die. At least you didn't lose them. And I'm like, but I did lose them. Like I did. They were not them anymore. That was not them anymore. So I had to almost sever that in a sense and say, that's like, I will cheer and root for your future self. That is my job as your mom. That means that love them dearly. If I have to report you to the police, I'm doing it. If I have to do, because my job is to give your future self a chance. I don't care if you don't like me right now. I don't care. So the shoe drops all the time, and the shoe may still drop. We've had these, my husband and I have had some really in-depth conversations. I'm sorry I get emotional with this, but
No, no, you're hitting me in the feelings right now.
I can see that, and I just gonna let it land and breathe. We've had many discussions where, like, are we done? I don't know. I have no idea. And when if things change, cross, or happen, I will deal with that then. I said the eulogy at my grandmother's funeral, and I that was an eye opener that I think I'm supposed to speak. And that was and I don't even know why I went here, but I'm going to trust this. She phoned me about 3 days before she passed, and we were very close. And she said, "Okay, everybody wants like Uncle Johnny to be doing the eulogy, and it's my funeral, and I want you to do it because I know you can find a way to put the words together." And I'm like, "I'm on it, Grandma. We're going to do it." But there's one line that I kept repeating, and it really was while we were in the throes of this, and it's that you can only cross one bridge at a time. We look at thinking and we overthink of all of the bridges that we're going to have to cross. Like, what if this happens? Then what if this happens? What if this happens? But I can't walk across 10 bridges at a time. I can walk across one, and I'll walk across whatever one is in front of me. And I would say that mantra over and over. I will pick up the shoe if it falls. It's probably going to fall, and I can only cross one bridge at a time. Those were the two things that I kept saying to myself over and over. So thank you for asking that question. And I hope that lands and makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it makes a lot of, yeah, that one hits me in the feelings because I know all of the things. I can speak to everything that you're speaking
It's
about. And
horrible. It's a horrible experience and I'm gonna say this too, is that in all honesty, because I'm really real and vulnerable, like I hated my kids for a while. I'm not gonna lie. Like I was so mad at them. I was so mad at them. And I couldn't forgive them. But every relationship we have starts with the one that we have with ourselves first. So the more I couldn't forgive them, the more resentment I was holding on to, and it was like literally killing me.
Yep.
So I had to come to terms with realizing what I actually had to do was forgive myself because I felt I had failed on every level. And I had to come to a space of going, okay, I said no. I didn't give them money for it. I didn't buy it for them. I didn't make it easy. I reported every time there was a major issue. I didn't enable, like, I did everything that I could. There was nothing I could go back and do differently. And we were still actually, I said to my husband once, we could go back and change every single thing we did and still be right here.
Mhm.
We could still be because the choices weren't mine. And that was the moment of going, okay, this is so if the choices aren't mine, then it's not mine to carry. It doesn't mean I don't care. It's just not mine to carry. And I have a hard enough time carrying my own stuff in my own life that I don't need to carry everyone else's stuff in my own life because then it affects me being able to live my life.
Mhm.
yeah.
Marsha, I want to know, you've talked about yourself, you mentioned your husband. Now, there's two questions I had, and they kind of go together. So maybe I'm just going to say it and see how it flows. But the one thing I was thinking about is I know when I hit my, like almost like a rock bottom, like a huge awareness, it was this really, I don't even remember what happened, but an awareness of something saying, like, stop, or,
Mhm.
like, yeah. I'm wondering, that's the first part of my question. Did you have, because you were not in this place of, accepting for yourself and you weren't there at the beginning. So I'm wondering, was there a particular moment that you recall, or was it a slow, awakening to the way that it should be for you to heal? The other thing that I was wondering is, how was your husband dealing with this? Because you might have had the realization to see things differently. I'm sure it put a strain on your marriage, because two people are not realizing things at the exact same time. They're dealing with this differently. You mentioned about losing your children, and it is a form of grief. It is a form of mourning, and yet they're still right there. So, but everybody grieves differently and deals with their anger differently. So, once again, the one thing I'm wondering is, when was that realization that you had to do things differently for yourself in order to change the reality of your world, and about you and your husband working together, or that effect on your relationship?
Those are such great questions. Honestly, great questions. Yes, I do remember a very specific turning point, and I will be real and say this, that there was a point where my one son attempted suicide. I found him while he was in the hospital. Our other son overdosed. And both things happened in our home
Mhm.
4 days apart. And I remember as soon as when the second instance happened, I literally was like, we're done. We're done. Because as a parent, everything I was doing was trying to keep them safe under my roof, yet both things happened here. And I was like, see, you don't have control. You actually don't have control. And if you're not careful, you're going down with the ship. Like, I knew I was going to go down. I was at a point where I was like, I don't even want to be here anymore to watch this. I honestly had many thoughts of suicide, had many thoughts of, because it was a horrific experience that I didn't want to be around to watch it. But I remember that moment and I'm like, we're done. We're totally done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore, because my actions aren't changing anything. When two people are trying to own the same thing at the same time, nobody owns it. There's no ownership. And the more I tried to own all of their choices, to manage, fix, or control, the less they had to. So
Mhm.
no human being will make a change in their life without consequence. It's not because they were kids. No human being will do it if there's no consequence involved. So I had to literally come to a space of go, that's not my choice. Like, that's not my choice. And say it with love. This is the thing is that we don't say it, don't come from a space of like, you've screwed this all up. I did that. I
Of
did that.
course.
I had to
We all
learn.
do.
I had to learn how to change my words. But I had to get to a space of saying, if you don't like where things are at in your life, all of your choices have led to here. If you don't like them, just make a different choice. Like, literally just make a different one. Don't beat yourself up. Just choose something different. And I had to come to a space of saying that and saying, like, I love you. I love you both. But this is not okay for me. This is not okay. I'm not going to live in it. I think that was the other thing, is there was one point where I was like, I cannot think of what universe I would ever sign up to live in this, like, gong show. Who lives in this? And that was a moment where I was like, I think I'm done. Like, I think I'm done. So that was really, it was a long time coming, but I can say that once I made that decision, I didn't go back.
Mhm.
Like, I didn't, it was hard. It was very hard at times. But once I had decided, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. Because it doesn't work. It's not working. I'm not doing that. So that was the decision. And then as far as, spouse, he's phenomenal. We've been married 'll be 28 years this year.
Wow.
He's phenomenal. But I would love to say we both came to decisions at the same time, and that's not true. That is totally not true. And the other thing I've learned over time is, many people have said, you're so lucky the way that the two of you work. And I'm like, oh, it's not lucky, honey. Like, we bust our butts on this. It's not luck. Is the fact that two broken pieces can't make a whole.
Mhm.
So I had to do my work. He had to do his work. We did our work together. We did, but we did have to come to a space at that time. And there was a point, I'm transparent about it. There was a point that I left. I walked out, and I just couldn't do it anymore. Like, it was
Mhm.
not safe. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with addiction and you're dealing with issues like that, it's not safe. And
Mhm.
safety had to become my top priority. And I just remember going, I don't choose this. Like, I don't want to live like this. So I left for a few weeks. And in the time that I left, pretty much every bomb could have went off. And I think that it's not that he didn't believe it. He had to see it firsthand. And he was like, oh my, like, are you kidding me? I'm like, yeah, I was not exaggerating. I was not like blowing things out of proportion. And then we just decided we had to do this together. We've had many moments where it's hard. We don't agree. Um, we try and come together as a decision to agree, but I also know where I stand. I am stubborn. I am like, I know I am, but there will be times where I'm like, I know this is the right decision. I didn't ask if you agree with it, but this is what I'm doing. You can do what you want. You can totally do what you want. I can't make him make choices, just like I can't make my kids or anything. So that's not my job either. Like, that's not my job. The more we own our own choices and really build and pour into ourselves, the more we have a chance to have better relationships with everyone in our life. And that, like, that's been a game changer. I can't, people talk about self-care, and I literally talk about it with my clients on a regular basis. It's not wishy-washy. It's not, it's absolutely required. It is required to fill yourself up, to overflow, to then give to others from overflow. If you're empty, and again, I say with love, if your cup is empty, stop waiting for someone else to come over and fill it up, because it's yours. It's no one else's cup. It's your cup. And by doing that, like, there have been many times, being very honest, where I'm like, why is this, like, why am I so frustrated? I'm like, oh, because I haven't put anything in. Wait, that's on me. Yes, like, gong show's happening over here, but I have to take care of me, because, and this is really important, I wanted to land, that's exactly what everyone else has to do.
Yes.
If my kids want to create something different in their life, they have to do it. They have to do it themselves. And they have. They totally have. But they have to make those decisions. So we all do. So that's why I live by that.
So
You
do
talk,
I.
yeah,
Yeah,
you hit on
amazing.
all the points. It's funny
Mhm.
because again, we say with these conversations that we speak to so many different types of incredible people, and they always have something where we're like, oh my gosh, everything you're saying hits home, and it is so relevant, and it's everything that you're saying right now hits home for me for sure. I'm wondering, now that you can step back and you're at this point in your life, and your life has come maybe full circle, who who are you now when you look back at the person that went into this and this
Mhm.
first began, and you're like, I like, because I know for myself there's moments I'm like, who, I don't even recognize that person. I wouldn't want to do it again. I needed it all. Wouldn't do it again. But who are you now on the other side of this?
I am such a different person now. I am such a different person now. People who've known me for most of my life, they're like, you're so different now. I'm like, I know, thank God. Like, thank God. Um, I'm still stubborn, strong-willed, like, determined. As my husband jokes, like, you don't listen to anything I say. You just do your own thing, which is, it is true. I am that person, but I stopped trying to fight my way through life. Like, I had to, I was a fighter through and through. It was the only way I was going to survive for many, many years. And I love those traits about myself. Like, I do, I love that part of her, but that part also brought a lot of control. And I've learned to let go of that, because that was killing me. It wasn't fixing anyone, it was killing me. And I have learned to let go of that. And now I have embraced so much more surrender, which I fought like a tooth and nail all the way through. It was like, surrender. Surrender meant quitting. When you're a fighter, surrender means quitting. And I was not a quitter. Like, I was absolutely not a quitter. So I had to learn and change my meaning of that. And I really believe that surrendering is the only way to learn. You can read about it, you can do it. Again, my life has made me who I am. And all of the things that I get to do and the impact I can create now, I could have never read in a book.
Right.
Like, there's no book that would have done justice to it. Do I wish I could have learned it a different way? Of course, of course. But it wouldn't have been as effective as what it is now. Learning surrender was a point where it was like, it's not mine to control. It's not mine to control. It's not mine to own. It's not mine to control. So I like where I am now, in that I have a blend of the fighter and the, like, letting go and surrender. And a lot of clients, I just noticed this yesterday when we were doing one of our group calls, A lot of clients who come to me, it is ironic. I think that we fall into 4 categories. We're either a victim, a people pleaser, a hider, or a fighter or perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
I have been a fighter perfectionist most of my life. The perfectionist piece is like, it's not even, it's really redundant right now. It's not something I fight through. I have no problem with messy action. But I attract a lot of hiders. And it is really funny because they come to me saying, I just don't, like, I don't want to be this way anymore. It's scary. And I lived there for a while, so I understand it. So it's funny when I look at the women and the people that I work with now, because they need me to pull that out, but they're also ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm grateful for the lessons that I've learned, because I couldn't have learned them any other way. And I do believe I live a far more fulfilling, happy, grateful life than I did before. And I've learned to let go of things that aren't mine. My boundaries are solid. I coach and speak on boundaries all the time. And I just think that I can make a difference now because of what I've learned. I couldn't have done it if I didn't embrace those parts of myself, because our stories make us who we are. We spend our life running from them, hiding them, and honest to God, they're your superpower. Like, they are literally your superpower. So the more we can talk about those things, the more we can bring them to light, the more we can use those lessons to impact others. Like, to me, it's powerful. So that has helped me to see and articulate all that. So I'm grateful for what I've learned.
I love that. Now, can you talk to us a little bit about radical acceptance? Or you have
Radical
told me
responsibility.
radical responsibility.
Yes.
I love that.
Two of my favorite words. My program was called that for the longest time, except it just scares a lot of people because they don't know how to take radical responsibility. Radical responsibility is literally taking 100% ownership of every single choice you make in your life, of every single action that you take. It is taking what life is giving to you. Stop pointing fingers, stop blaming, stop like putting all that emphasis on everything that's happening to you, and shifting to understand life is happening for you. So I'd be totally honest, when somebody said that to me before, like, I literally want to punch people, because I'm like, how is this happening for me? Because this is like the worst experience of my life. But now I've just had to learn to come to a space of, okay, that is what happened to us, for us, that what I do next is what matters. Like, that it's all about what I choose to do next. That's radical responsibility. So no matter what is happening, it's what am I doing next? Again, letting go of why, asking the what, staying in action. And the thing is I've done a little bit of research on this, because I think there's 2 things. Blame and ownership sit on 2 opposite ends of the spectrum. So if you are ever blaming someone for something in your life, you're bringing up a lot of anxiety, a lot of resentment, a lot of really negative, low vibe emotions, and you actually can't take ownership, which means you can't change. So if you're going to live in blame, there's 0 change that's going to happen, and you can choose to stay there. That's a choice, or you can choose to do something with it. So that, to me, is the first part of radical responsibility. The other is that I talk a lot about standards and expectations. Expectations, I had to really learn to let go of the expectations, because when you deal with a trauma like this, and we're in the world of social media, it would be Christmas, it would be birthdays, and everybody would be like showing pictures and all these things, and I'm like, my family doesn't look like that. This is the worst day of my life. Like, how can I had a vision of what I wanted my life to look like, and because it was all based on expectations, I was like future living. I wasn't grateful for what I had right now. And I know that's hard. Like, I understand it's hard to find gratitude when you're in the worst stage of your life, but it is the exact time you have to find gratitude, because that's the only way you can shift it. So radical responsibility was looking at, okay, those are my expectations. I can't control that. They're not realistic. They're not going to happen. You're setting yourself up for failure over and over. Instead, what are my standards? And standards are what I choose to live by, how I choose to take care of myself, how I show up, what I pour into others. Like, standards are everything. That's like what I do in a day-to-day present moment. So yes, those 2 things have changed who I am. And I could never do the work I do now if I didn't live it, ever.
I am in awe of every word that has come out of your mouth. I'm like, it's just amazing. So, as we wrap up, I'm wondering, you shared so many valuable pieces of advice, wisdom. Is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with as a takeaway?
I will say that we all have stories.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of us. We all have stories. Your story has the meaning that you give it. So if you call it the worst experience of your life and you hide it in shame, you are literally giving power back to your story and not to yourself.
Right.
By learning to pull the lessons out and call your story for what it is, recognize that it's made you who you are. You can't love yourself and hate every single thing that's made you who you are. It's just not physically possible. So learning those lessons, pulling them out, building yourself back up again. You're human, you're a miracle, you're worthy, all those things. You can learn how to stand on your story and not in it. And that can change a lot of things. When you stand in it, you replay it over and over and over. You give your power to the story. Whether you choose to speak, share, write, podcast, and share your story, or whether you choose to just be free of your story, you deserve to not live in it. You deserve to know how to stand on it, because the solutions that you're holding on to, the stories that you're hiding, someone somewhere is praying for the solutions that you have. So learning how to stand on that story and speak with conviction and find your confidence and your courage, the people that you are meant to impact can see you then, and the people that can impact you, can find you. So you owe it to yourself and you owe it to everyone else. I promise you, you might be listening to this and go, that's impossible. It's not. I've seen women all kinds do it. And when you can take your worst pain and turn it into a purpose, your entire life changes. Like, what if your story happens for you?
I totally agree. Actually, Siobhan and I, that's what brought us together. That's what
Yeah.
fuels us in what we're doing with our Candid Conversations. As a partnership, we are real, raw, and resilient, and we embrace life with vulnerability, compassion, and courage. And that's what we want to inspire other people to do, because we're all just ordinary people living extraordinary lives, and we just need to realize that. We thank you so much, Marsha. Can you share once again? We only spoke about your one book. You have written two, or collaborated with the one book, written another book. Best-selling author, but can you share the titles of your books once again and where people can buy them? Plus, we will be sharing all your contact details with people so they can follow you, find you, and contact you for coaching and other things that you offer.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. Both of my books are available on Amazon. I also keep a number of them here, and I mail them out on a regular basis. Sometimes people say, hey, can I get one? And you can sign it and I'll send it. So that's an option. You can reach out to me directly. The second book is called Owning Your Choices, and it is the collaborative book of stories that is allowed. We've come together with women trying to be in a space to encourage them to share their story, because it's scary. It's really scary to put your story into a book. But in a collaborative book, it allows you to lean on each other a little bit more. So that's my second book. And literally, you can find me pretty much anywhere, and social media. All of my stuff will be there. I just help women with their stories to add purpose from their pain.
Thank you so much,
I love
Marsha.
that. Thank you
Yes.
again. This has been a pleasure. And I've got so many takeaways. I feel like we could sit in here and talk and connect on a lot of things. So we appreciate you being in this space with us and being vulnerable and sharing, because it's scary to be honest about your stories. And we really, really appreciate you coming out and chatting with us.
I can't thank you enough. And I just want to say, like, I'm on a number of podcasts. You guys are fantastic. There's some great questions that you asked and really got to the root of it. And that's what we need more of. We need more real, raw, vulnerable people who are willing to stand up, encourage others, share stories, all of those things. So I thank you both for connecting, honestly, and for allowing me this space, to put me in the space to ask questions, because I'm usually the one asking the questions. So I really, really appreciate and honor the work that you're both doing. Thank you so much.
Oh, Marsha, thank you.
Marsha.
And thank you to our listeners once again for tuning into another Candid Conversation. Until next time.
Bye, guys.